Okay, match 3 with Blue-Black Delver. We get to be on the play this time. And our hand only has one land, and it's not even an island, it's an Evolving Wilds. So we could do that turn 1. Turn 2, we could ponder and find another land, or we could brainstorm. We have anglers. I don't really like this hand at all. There's no removal, only one piece of counter magic, double angler. I think I have to mulligan for a better chance. Double Evolving Wilds is awkward, but I don't want to go down to 5, so I think I have to keep this one. Our opponent's down to 5, down to 4, down to 3. Wow. They kept a 3-card hand. Well, I guess I'll get rid of this Deprive. I already have 2 counter spells. Maybe try to find a quick creature to put this game out of our opponent's grasp before they draw out of it. Find ourselves an island here. Alright, we're going to pass the turn. I'm going to brainstorm and then crack Evolving Wilds, most likely. Opponent's going to Gataxian Probe us, that's fine. They're probably on Izzet Blitz, I would imagine. Alright, they pass the turn without hitting their second land drop. We will brainstorm, decide what we want to throw away here. Our opponent's going to dispel our brainstorm. That's certainly interesting. Alright, well, I'm going to crack this Evolving Wilds anyway. Yeah, they're most likely on Izzet Blitz. They're playing main deck dispels. I think I'll preordain, try to find a land here. Alright. A little bit awkward getting rid of that black source, but we'll find a black source eventually. One way we could lose this game is by not having a counterspell up on this turn, and then they just resolve like a Kiln Fiend or something. Alright, there's a black source, perfect. And a Ponder. Alright, we'll lead with Ponder. There's the Angler, perfect. So we'll put Backwater, Ponder, Angler, not Shuffle, play the Swamp, play the Angler, and that should win us the game, most likely. Because we have counter magic protection, and our opponent only has 3 cards in hand. Yep, Izzet Blitz. So the best thing they could do here is double bolt our Angler, and then we counter the second bolt. Okay, there's a Kiln Fiend. So we can Agony Warp that. So I think I'm going to let that resolve and kill it on our turn. I'll let our opponent chump block if they wish to do so. They could also try to Mutagenic Growth to block and then trade. But then I would just be able to Agony Warp the creature in response. Ponder's fine. Our opponent chose not to shuffle. So they probably have another creature here? No. Okay. Something that would be semi-good for them is Vapor Snag, because then they make us recast the Gurbag Angler and buy themselves some time. Go ahead and Ponder. Delver, Brainstorm, Thought Scour. Well, I don't really want any of those cards. I want more creatures, and I don't want Delver, because then I can't hold up and counterspell this turn, so I think I'm going to shuffle. Another counterspell. Opponent has a Kiln Fiend. I think it's best to just counter this. And I'm not going to play Delver of Secrets. I'd rather have double counterspell up, since we have lethal on board. Okay, we overcome our opponent's multi-3 quite handily, and we get to sideboard. Alright, well, against Izzet Blitz, we want all the removal we can get. So we're going to bring in Doomblade and Agony Warp. And I think we'll also bring in one Exclude, since that's the thing we need to get rid of the most, is creatures. Stormbound Geist does not block anything except for Delver when it's flipped, so I'm going to get rid of that. Gush is a little slow, and on the draw, Deprive is a little bit slow. And we're going to run this. Alright, we have 2 removal spells, and the ability to cast them both starting on turn 2, so we're going to keep this hand. Probably be fetching for a swamp with our Evolving Wilds on turn 1. Our opponent fetches as well. Yep, so we don't really care as much about resolving a card selection card here as we do about getting all our removal spells online. Preordain is pretty good to see. That means our opponent's probably not casting a creature. Still going to get a black anyway. It would be nice to get a blue and then hold up and counterspell, but if our opponent just goes Kiln Fiend and then dispel our counterspell and then we don't find a black source, it would be pretty awful for us. Hold up and removal here, and then if we don't need to use one, we can brainstorm. Alright, our opponent's going to know what's up. Alright, our opponent's going to play a Stormbound Geist, and unfortunately we're not able to counterspell this. So we're going to have to end up using 2 removal spells on it. Luckily though, it's not like a Kiln Fiend or a Nivik Cyclops. It can't get pumped up by our opponent just casting non-creature spells. So what are we going to do here? Are we going to use up an Edict, an Agony Warp, or something else? I suppose we can use Agony Warp. Let it come back with Undying. And we get an Exclude. I like that a lot. Now if our opponent plays a creature spell, we exclude it, and if they don't, then we can remove this Agony Warp on their end step. Or use an Agony Warp to remove their Stormbound Geist on the end step. I'm going to let this Preordain resolve. Our opponent goes top with Preordain. Kiln Fiend. Okay, well we're going to try to exclude this and see if our opponent has a counterspell. Our opponent did not see the exclude when they Gitaxian probed us, which is good for us. Alright, there's a land. I'm going to hold up and counterspell plus Agony Warp instead of playing one of these Brainstorms or Ponders on my turn. Alright, they'll start off with Gush. Let that resolve. Another Gitaxian Probe. Alright, our opponent's going to cast a Nivik Cyclops. I'm going to attempt to counterspell this, since we can't get rid of it with Agony Warp. And our opponent could choose to sacrifice the Geist instead to Edict, if they decide that their hand is good enough to keep on triggering the Cyclops. And now that I don't have counter magic up, I think I'm just going to go ahead and do this main phase. This is a little bit awkward if our opponent has Mutagenic Growth, because then we take 2 extra damage, since we're doing this pre-combat, but... oh, well. Speak of the devil, there's the Mutagenic Growth. But now we have it out of their hand, at least. We fall all the way to 15. I take that back. We don't take extra damage because we get the -3/-3 effect from the Agony Warp. Yeah, that didn't make much sense that I said that. Alright, we're going to ponder here. Try to look for another black source maybe so we can play Edict and Scavenger in the same turn. Disfigure. Well, Disfigure is good against Kiln Fiend. And another Stormbound Geist. But I don't really want to have to draw the rest of these cards to do it. It's also unlikely that we'll be able to play Scavenger, wait a turn, then try to block the Geist, disfigure it, and eat it in combat. Because our opponent will have something to either remove the Scavenger or counter the disfigure or something. Yeah, I don't think I like these cards. I think I'm going to have to shuffle. Counterspell. I don't mind that one at all. Get to cast a Scavenger so we can block. And we get to leave open a counter spell. Alright, our opponent's going to Gush again. It's kind of interesting that they're gushing so aggressively. It's helping them find what they need, like more counter magic and creatures, but it's making their late game a little bit worse to not be able to keep lands in play. This Preordain is going bottom and then top. Opponent Gitaxian probes us a third time, so it's possible we don't even want to block this Stormbound Geist if we think that we can race it. Our opponent presumably has bolts in their deck, but a Delver of Secrets. How much do we care about a Delver of Secrets? Not as much as we care about a Kiln Fiend that could resolve right after this, but I think I'm going to go ahead and counter this Delver anyway. The reason is it makes my Diabolic Edict worse if this Delver doesn't flip, and if it does flip, it's going to be a problem. Okay, our opponent's going to Pyroblast to keep the Delver. Hopefully we can Ponder or Brainstorm into more removal. Our opponent's leaving back the Geist. Alright, so I think I'm going to Brainstorm first, since I have an Evolving Wilds to shuffle some cards away with. So what do I not want here? I think I'm going to put Basic Island back and then Brainstorm back. And I'm going to start by trying to Doomblade this Stormbound Geist. Let's see how that works. Okay. So now we get to attack for 3. So how much do I care about keeping a Brainstorm on top of my library? Not very much. So I think I'm going to Ponder. And which card do I want most of these, or do I just want to shuffle? I can take one of the cards and then fetch with Evolving Wilds. I don't think I actually want any of these cards. They don't really do anything. So I'm going to shuffle, play my Evolving Wilds, and pass. Delver of Secrets fails to flip, so it's most likely going to be Diabolic Edict fodder. Okay. Oh, we forgot to fetch with Evolving Wilds. We did not draw basic, so it turns out it would not matter anyway. And do I want a Diabolic Edict main phase? Yeah, I suppose I'll do that right now, in case our opponent boarded in Counterspell. Dispel, it doesn't really matter. We'd rather our opponent use the mana on their turn, but... Okay, so one of them goes away. Let's see if the other one flips. Nope, it still fails to flip. Our opponent did not have a bolt last turn, or they would have bolted our Scavenger while we were tapped out, so we might just go all the way with it. I won't forget to fetch this time. Mental Note. Alright. Let's attack first. Go with a main phase Mental Note. And draw a land. Well, that's not great. But if our opponent just doesn't have removal for the Scavenger, we could get there. Gitaxian Probe. Okay. They actually pay mana instead of life for this 4th probe. And now they have a blocker for our 3/3. And we have an Angler. So I think we're going to play Angler first. And the reason for that is that we want our opponent to tell us whether or not they're countering this before we decide whether or not to attack. If they were going to counter, I would have held back the Scavenger and waited till I drew removal to try to attack with it. Teamer Battle Rage. Okay, so they're going to do that to save their Insectile Aberration. But that still doesn't matter because it's only a chump blocker for the Gurmag Anglers so far, unless they can pair that with something else, like another Battle Rage or a Mutagenic Growth. Thought Scour. Okay. See if we can draw something that matters. Another Angler. Perfect. Okay. So now a Teamer Battle Rage to trade or a Mutagenic Growth to trade doesn't really matter. Okay, so they're going to trade. Once again, we're going to fake having a counterspell up. Our opponent's probably not going to believe us, but it costs us basically nothing to do this because we have plenty of stuff in our graveyard. Pass the turn. See if our opponent can keep up their blocking or if we will attack for the win. All right, and we did it. Took down match 3. 3 for 3 so far. And moving on to match 4.